there, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a little bear. This is a low sew super fast to make bear. There's really only one piece to sew on for this entire piece. And honestly, I would say if you're a more experienced crocheter, you can probably make this pretty fast. But if you're not as experienced, no worries. Like all my tutorials, I do try to make my videos as beginner friendly as possible and go over all the skills and stitches, everything step by step, so please feel free to speed up or slow down the video if needed to fit your preference. I'm using US terms in this video and you'll need some scissors, stuffing, a needle, and I'll be using number 6 super bulky blanket yarn in brown and also a little bit of cream colored yarn and the tiniest bit of black. I'm also using a 6.5mm hook, but you can use a similar hook size or use the yarn that you have. Just make sure that if you do change a yarn size that you also use a hook size that matches. For crocheting plushies, it's recommended to go smaller on hook size than what's on the yarn label for less holes in your project. For my plushie, I'm using 12mm safety eyes, but feel free to switch out the eyes with something else. You can use felt, buttons, or even embroider it on with yarn. I'll also be using 3 stitch markers in this tutorial. I especially recommend it if you are a beginner. If you don't have it though, you can use something else to mark your stitches that can be attached and removed. Now that we have everything, let's get started. We're going to start by making the snout of our bear. This is the only part that we're going to need to attach and sew on later. It's a very low sew pattern. So grab your hook and the yarn color that you want to use. I'm going to be using this cream color, and we're going to start with 8 single crochets in a magic circle. So to make a magic circle, start by pinching the yarn between the thumb and the pointer finger, and then wrap the yarn across the pointer and the middle finger going upwards. Then wrap it around the back and bring it back down the front, forming an X. Hold that in place with the ring finger. Now grab your hook, have it facing upwards, and go underneath the X. Rotate the hook towards the middle finger and grab that lower strand of yarn on the middle finger and pull it underneath the X, exiting out the top. Rotate your hook again. And this time we're going over the X in between those 2 strands of yarns on top of the middle finger and grab that lower strand of yarn again and pull it for the loop on the hook. And that's how you make a magic circle. If you made your magic circle correctly, you should be able to tighten up the circle by pulling on that yarn tail that's left over on the circle, and also be able to loosen it up by pulling on the inside of the circle. But we're not going to tighten it up yet because we still need to make 8 single crochets inside of the magic circle. So to do that, insert your hook into the circle. Make sure you're going underneath both strands of yarn on the magic circle. And then we're going to grab our working yarn, pull it through the circle, and now we should have 2 loops on the hook, so grab the working yarn again and pull it through both loops on the hook. So that's how you make a single crochet inside the magic circle. So we're going to repeat this 7 more times for a total of 8. So grab the yarn, pull it through the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then we're doing this again. Grab the yarn, pull it through the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. That's 3. Go back into the circle, grab the yarn, pull it through the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook, that's 4. And then we'll repeat this again for 5, and then again for 6, 2 more, that's 7, and finally we're going to make our 8th single crochet inside of the magic circle. Now pull on that yarn tail that's left over on the magic circle to tighten it up. And then to connect the round to make a full circle, we're going to make a slip stitch into that first stitch. So if you don't know what a stitch looks like, it looks like 2 strands of yarn running across the top or a V shape. So insert your hook into that stitch underneath both strands of yarn. And then to make a slip stitch, we're just going to grab the yarn with our hook and pull it through that stitch and then through the loop on the hook. And now we just need to fasten off, so grab the yarn and pull it for the loop on the hook. And now let's cut off the excess yarn, but make sure that you leave behind a lot of extra yarn so we can use it to sew the snout onto the face later. Finally, just pull the yarn all the way through the loop and we are done with the snout of our bear. Grab the color that you want to use as the main color for your bear. I'm using brown, and again we're going to start with a magic circle. So as a recap, wrap the yarn across the pointer and the middle finger and then around the back and then back down the front, forming an X. Then we're going to grab our hook, insert it underneath the X and rotate it towards that lower strand of yarn on the middle finger and pull it underneath the X, exiting out the top. This time go over the X in between those 2 strands of yarn on top of the middle finger and grab that lower strand of yarn and pull it through the loop on the hook. So for the body, we're going to be making 6 single crochets inside of the magic circle. So insert your hook into the circle, make sure you're going underneath both strands of yarn, and then grab the working yarn, pull it through the circle, and then grab the yarn again and pull it for those 2 loops on the hook. We're going to repeat this again 5 more times for a total of 6. Grab the yarn, pull it through the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. Same thing again for our 3rd single crochet. Grab the yarn, pull it for the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. Same thing again for our 4th single crochet. Grab the yarn, pull it for the circle, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then let's make our 5th one. And finally, our 6th single crochet inside of the magic circle. Once again, we're going to pull on that yarn tail to tighten up our magic circle. And now we can move on to round 2. For round 2, we're making an increase in every single stitch all the way around for a total of 12 stitches. So grab your stitch marker and place it into the last stitch that you just made. So a stitch looks like 2 strands of yarn running across the top or a V shape, just as a reminder. And so the last stitch that we just made is the one that's not the loop on the hook, but the one attached directly behind it. So place your stitch marker into that stitch, and this will help us keep track of our rounds. So we're going to go into our first stitch, so skipping that knob in the front. Remember, a stitch looks like 2 strands of yarn running across the top or a V shape. So insert our hook into that stitch, and we're going to treat it like the magic circle and make a single crochet inside of it. So grab the yarn, pull it through the stitch, just like we did with the magic circle, but this time we're pulling it for the stitch. And now again, we should have 2 loops on our hook, and we're going to grab the yarn and pull it for the 2 loops on the hook. But because we're making an increase, we're going to be making another single crochet in that same exact stitch. An increase is just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So insert your hook into that same exact first stitch, pull the yarn through, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And we're going to do this again in our second stitch as well. So making 2 single crochets in the second stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then again, going to that same second stitch, we're making a second single crochet to make an increase. Same thing in the third stitch, we're making 2 single crochets for an increase. So there's our first single crochet. And then going into that same third stitch, we're making a second single crochet to make an increase. Same thing in the fourth stitch, we're making 2 single crochets inside of it for an increase. So there's our first single crochet. And then again into that same exact stitch, we're making a second single crochet for an increase. Same thing in the next stitch. We're going to make 1 single crochet to start, and then we're also going to be making a second single crochet in that same exact stitch for an increase. Now we're going to move our stitch marker, and this marks our last stitch in this round. Again, we're making an increase, so we're making 2 single crochets inside of this stitch. And there's our second one, and we are done with round 2. So let's make sure that we have 12 stitches total. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you also have 12 too, that's perfect, and we can move on to round 3. Before we start on round 3, again, let's grab our stitch marker and place it into that last stitch that we just made in round 2. And for round 3, we're making 1 single crochet and 1 increase, and we're going to repeat this 6 times for a total of 18 stitches. So going into that first stitch, we're going to make just 1 single crochet inside of it, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And in that second stitch, we're making an increase. So going straight to the second stitch, we're going to make 2 single crochets inside that second stitch, back into the second stitch for a second single crochet, and that makes our increase. And in the next stitch, again, we're just making 1 single crochet inside of that stitch, and then we're making 2 single crochets in the next stitch for an increase. And there's our second single crochet. Moving on, we're making 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then we're making 2 single crochets in the stitch after that for an increase. Then we're making 1 single crochet in the stitch after, and then we're making 2 single crochets again in the next stitch for an increase. And then we're making one single crochet in the next stitch. And then we're making 2 single crochets in a stitch afterwards for an increase. There's the first one, and then back in the same stitch for a second single crochet to make that increase. Again, we're making 1 single crochet in the stitch afterwards, just one. And finally, we're on our last stitch, so let's remove that stitch marker, and we're making 2 single crochets inside of this stitch for an increase. There's our first one, and then there's the second one. We should now have 18 stitches total, so let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Once again, before we start on round 4, let's place our stitch marker into the last stitch that we just made. And for round 4, we're making 16 single crochets, and then we're doing a slip stitch, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch in the front loop only of 1 stitch, and then we're doing 1 final single crochet. So going to that first stitch, let's make 1 single crochet, and then same thing in the second stitch, just 1 single crochet. Same thing in the third stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fourth stitch, just 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fifth stitch, 1 single crochet, and so on. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16. This next stitch is going to form the ear of our bear, and we're only going to be working in it in front loop only. So you know how a stitch has 2 strands of yarn running across the top? These are our 2 loops. We have a back loop and a front loop. So when we usually make a single crochet, usually we go into the full stitch underneath both loops. But when we're working in front loop only, we're only going to go into that first strand or that first loop. If you do have an extra stitch marker though, go ahead and use it to mark the back loop. Even though we're not using that back loop now, we are going to be using it later, and it's good to have the stitch marker to help find it. And then we're going to begin by making a slip stitch in that front loop. So to make a slip stitch, go into that front loop of the stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through that loop, and then we're just going to pull it directly through the loop on the hook. That's how you make a slip stitch. So now we're going to chain 1, grab the yarn, and pull it through the loop on the hook. And then we're going to make a double crochet. So wrap the yarn around your hook, and we're going to go into that same exact front loop that we made that slip stitch. And now we should have 3 loops on the hook since we only went for that front loop only. We're going to grab the yarn and pull it through that front loop, and we should again have 3 loops on the hook. And then we're going to grab the yarn and pull it through those first 2 loops on the hook. And then we're going to grab the yarn again and pull it through the remaining loops on the hook. That's how you make a double crochet. And we're going to chain 1 again, grab the yarn, pull it through the loop, and then we're going to make 1 last slip stitch again for that same exact front loop that we've been making all our stitches in. Grab the yarn, pull it through the loop, and then directly through the loop on the hook. And that forms the ear of our bear. So now let's remove our stitch marker, and we're going to do our final single crochet of this round. So go into the full stitch, both the front and the back loop, just like normal. We're going to make a single crochet. So let's grab our stitch marker and place it into the last stitch that we just made to mark the end of this round. And for round 5, we're making 2 single crochets, and again we're making another ear, so another slip stitch, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch, all in the front loop only of 1 stitch, and then 15 single crochets. So going into that first stitch, we're just making a regular single crochet, and then same thing in the second stitch, we're just making 1 single crochet inside of that stitch, just like normal. And then we're going to be making our second ear, so just like how we made that first ear, we're only going to be working in the front loop only of this next stitch. If you have another extra stitch marker, place it into the back loop of the stitch just so we have it marked for later. So just like we did the first time, again, we're going to go into that front loop only, and we're going to make a slip stitch. So grab the yarn, pull it for that loop, and then directly for the loop on the hook. Then we're going to chain 1 and make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that same exact front loop, pull the yarn for the loop, pull the yarn for the first 2 loops on the hook, and then grab the yarn again and pull for the remaining loops on the hook. Then we're going to chain 1 again and go back into that same exact front loop and make a final slip stitch. Now we're going to make 15 single crochets, so we're going to go into that first stitch, going for the full stitch now, so we're no longer working in front loop only, and make a single crochet. Same thing in the second stitch, just 1 single crochet. Same thing in the third stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fourth stitch, 1 single crochet, and so on. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And remember when I said we're going to use that back loop later? Well, now is the time. Instead of working on top of the stitches that we made to make the ear, we're going to go into that back loop instead, where we place that stitch marker and make our 14 single crochet there. So make that 14 single crochet instead of that leftover back loop. And then we're going to remove our stitch marker and make our 15th and last single crochet of this round inside of that stitch, going for the full stitch again just like usual. And once we're done with that final single crochet, we are done with round 5. We just finished forming the ears, and now in round 6 we're going to start forming the feet. So place your stitch marker into the last stitch that we just made, and for round 6 we're making 7 single crochets, a 4 double crochet bobble, 3 single crochets, a 4 double crochet bobble, and then 6 single crochets. So going into that first stitch, we're just going to make our first single crochet, and then in the second stitch again we're just making 1 single crochet. And just like we did earlier, our third single crochet is going to go in the back loop only that we had that stitch marker marked at. So we're not going to touch any of the stitches that we used to make the ears. Instead, we're just going to make that single crochet in that back loop that we have left over. And then we're just going to continue just like normal, making a single crochet in that next stitch. Remember, we're skipping all those stitches that make up the ear. And then there's our 5th single crochet in that 5th stitch, our 6th single crochet in the 6th stitch, our 7th single crochet in that 7th stitch, and then we're going to make a 4 double crochet bobble. So to do that, start by wrapping the yarn around your hook. Then we're going to insert our hook into the stitch. We're going to grab the yarn, pull it through the stitch. We should now have 3 loops on the hook. We're going to grab the yarn again and just pull it for those first 2 loops. And then we're going to repeat this again 3 more times, wrap the yarn around the hook. Insert your hook into that exact same stitch. Grab the yarn and pull it for that same stitch again. Grab the yarn and pull it for the first 2 loops on the hook. We're going to repeat this again, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert the hook into the exact same stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull the yarn for the first 2 loops on the hook. So we're going to repeat this one more time, wrap the yarn around the hook, go into that exact same stitch again, grab the yarn, pull it for that same stitch, and then pull the yarn for the first 2 loops on the hook. You should now have 5 loops on the hook, and we're going to grab the yarn and pull it through all 5 loops. This creates a little puff that makes the feet of our bear. So moving on, we're going to be making 3 single crochets in the next 3 stitches. So going into that first stitch, we're just going to make 1 single crochet in that next stitch. Pull that stitch tight to really make that bobble pop. And then we're going to go into that second stitch. We're going to make 1 single crochet in that stitch as well. And then same thing in the third stitch, just one single crochet, and then again we're going to make another 4 double crochet bobble. So wrap the yarn around the hook, go into that stitch, we're going to grab the yarn, pull it through, and then grab the yarn and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook, wrap the yarn around again, go back into the same exact stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then grab the yarn and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over again, insert your hook into that same exact stitch, grab the yarn and pull it through, and then for the first 2 loops on the hook. And we're going to repeat this one more time. Yarn over, go into that same exact stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull for the first 2 loops on the hook. And we should now have 5 loops on the hook. Grab the yarn and pull it through all 5 loops on the hook. And now we're going to make 6 single crochets to finish off the round. So going into that next stitch, we're just making 1 single crochet. Pull that stitch tight to really make that bobble pop. And then same thing in the second stitch, just 1 single crochet. Same thing in the third stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fourth stitch, 1 single crochet. Once again, 1 single crochet in that fifth stitch. And finally, let's remove that stitch marker and make our final single crochet of this round. So again, let's grab our stitch marker and place it into the last stitch that we just made. And for round 7, we're just making 1 single crochet in every single stitch all the way around for a total of 18 stitches. So going to that first stitch, just make 1 single crochet. Same thing in the second stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the third stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fourth stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fifth stitch, 1 single crochet, and so on. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and finally, let's remove that stitch marker and we're going to make our final single crochet in this round. So for rounds 8 and 9, we're just repeating the exact same thing that we just did in round 7. So for the next 2 rounds, we're making 1 single crochet in every single stitch all the way around for a total of 18 stitches. If you find it helpful to follow along with me, go ahead and rewind the video to the beginning of round 7 and repeat this 2 more times. Otherwise, go ahead and pause this video and I'll see you at the end of round 9. Okay, so once you're done with those 2 rounds, this is what your piece should look like. You should have 9 rounds total. So let's count them starting from the magic circle. That's our first round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you also have 9 too, then we can move on to round 10. So for round 10, we're going to be adding our second set of feet for our bear. So if you haven't yet, place that stitch marker into the last stitch that you just made in round 9. And for round 10, we're making 8 single crochets, a 4 double crochet bobble, 3 single crochets, a 4 double crochet bobble, and then 5 single crochets. We should still have 18 stitches all the way around. So going into that first stitch, we're just going to make 1 single crochet. Same thing in the second stitch, just 1 single crochet. Same thing in the third stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fourth stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the fifth stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing in the sixth stitch, 1 single crochet. Same thing again in the seventh stitch, 1 single crochet. And then we're going to make that 8 single crochet in that 8th stitch. And now we're going to make our bobble. So make sure that this bobble is going to align with the one in the front. If for some reason yours doesn't, well, I would just say just like place the bobble in a place where it does align. I don't know if this is questionable advice to give, but I do think it's more important that your bobbles do align than for you to follow my pattern perfectly. If it does align, then let's make that bobble. So start by wrapping the yarn around the hook and then insert it into the stitch. Grab the yarn and pull it through the stitch, and then yarn over and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook. Wrap the yarn around the hook again, go into that same exact stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull the yarn for the first 2 loops on the hook. Again, yarn over, insert your hook into the exact same stitch again, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then again for the first 2 loops on the hook. Once more, yarn over, insert the hook into the exact same place, grab the yarn, pull for that stitch, and then pull for the first 2 loops. You should now have 5 loops on your hook. Grab the yarn and pull through all 5 loops. Now we're going to continue and make 3 single crochets. So going into that next stitch, make 1 single crochet. If your bobble is trying to hide like mine is, go ahead and push it out so it pops out more. And then we're going to make 1 single crochet in the next stitch. And then again 1 single crochet in the stitch after that. And now we're going to make another bobble. So wrap the yarn around the hook, insert it into that stitch, grab the yarn, pull it for the stitch, grab the yarn and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook, and then once more wrap the yarn around the hook, insert your hook into that same exact stitch and pull the yarn through, grab the yarn and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook, and then yarn over again into that same exact stitch, grab the yarn and pull it through that stitch, grab the yarn again and pull for the first 2 loops on the hook, and then once more yarn over into that same exact stitch, grab the yarn, pull it for that stitch, and then for the first 2 loops on the hook, and once again you should have 5 loops on the hook, grab the yarn, and pull it through all 5 loops. If your bobble isn't quite bobbling, just push it out a little bit. Now we're going to make 5 single crochets to finish off the round, so make 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Make sure that single crochet is tight to really make that bobble pop, and then we're going to go into the next stitch and make our second single crochet, and then to the third stitch we're going to make another single crochet. In the fourth stitch we're going to make another single crochet, and then finally let's remove our stitch marker and we're going to place 1 single crochet inside of that last stitch for our 5th single crochet. So you should still have 18 stitches total all the way around at this point, and we are done with round 10. Go ahead and add your stitch marker into the last stitch that we just made, and for round 11 we're going to be making the tail of our bear. So we're going to be making 1 single crochet and then slip stitch, chain 1, slip stitch all on the front loop only of 1 stitch, and then 16 single crochets. So go into that first stitch and make a single crochet, and then we're going to be placing our tail in this next stitch. Make sure that the placement is also roughly centered to the ears of your bear too. If this spot right here isn't quite centered to the ears for you, then go ahead and place your tail in a place where it is centered to the ears. And again, we're working in the front loop only, so grab your stitch marker and place it into the back loop so we can save that spot to use for later. So going to the front loop only of this stitch, we're going to make a slip stitch, grab the yarn, pull for the loop, and then directly for the loop on the hook. And then we're going to make a chain, and then we're going to make another slip stitch. So going to that same front loop, we're going to grab the yarn again, pull for that front loop, and then for the loop on the hook. And that's it for the tail. So proceeding on, we're just going to be making 16 single crochets. So going into the next stitch, we're going to make 1 single crochet. And then if you do have an extra stitch marker, go ahead and grab it and place it into the single crochet that we just made so we can mark the spot for later. It makes it a lot easier to know where to place our stitches in the next round. And then we're just going to continue to make our single crochets, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the stitch after that, 1 single crochet in the stitch after that. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, And the 16th and last single crochet should land inside of the one with the stitch marker. And we are done with round 11. So grab your stitch marker and place it into that last stitch that we just made, and for round 12 we're making one single crochet, one decrease, and repeat this 6 times for a total of 12 stitches. So going into that first stitch, we're just going to make one single crochet, and then after that we're going to be making a decrease. So the decrease is going to be going through that back loop that we have left over for making that tail, and also that first single crochet we made after, so basically where we placed our stitch markers. So if you follow my other videos, then you know that I usually like to do the invisible decrease method, but because of the placement of these stitches, I'm going to do the regular decrease just for this stitch. If you can do the invisible decrease by connecting these two stitches, then go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'll show you how to do the regular decrease. So going into that back loop, we're going to grab the yarn and pull it through that loop. You should now have 2 loops on the hook, and then we're also going to place our hook for that stitch that we have marked with the stitch marker. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab the yarn and pull it through that stitch. You should now have 3 loops on the hook, and then we're going to grab the yarn and pull it through all 3 loops on the hook. And then in the next stitch, we're just going to make one single crochet. And then I'm going to transition back to doing the invisible decrease method since I prefer it. If you want to use the regular decrease to do the rest of these, that's totally fine too. But to do an invisible decrease, we're just going for the front loop of the next stitch, and then also the front loop of the stitch after that. And then we're going to grab our yarn and pour for those 2 front loops of both of those stitches, and then grab the yarn and pour for the 2 loops on the hook. And then in the next stitch, we're just making one single crochet. And then we're making another invisible decrease, going for the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Grab the yarn, pull for those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then back to making a single crochet in the next stitch. And then an invisible decrease, going for the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Grab the yarn, pull it through those loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then a regular single crochet in the next stitch. And then another invisible decrease, going for the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. And then another single crochet in the next stitch, and we're on our final decrease, so let's remove that stitch marker, and we're going to go for the front loops only of the next 2 stitches, pull for those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And we should now have 12 stitches total, so let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now let's take a break from crocheting and add the eyes. I like to place the eyes 2 rounds in front of the ear and around the corner part of the ears. You can definitely adjust your eye placement based on what looks right to you. Just make sure that you're not placing the eyes too low because you want your snout to be able to fit underneath the eyes. When you're ready, secure your eyes in place by adding the backings. Then start adding stuffing to the bear. Since it is a smaller plushie, definitely use smaller chunks of stuffing so you don't accidentally overstuff the bear. Once you're done with adding stuffing to most of the bear, we're going to make our last round. So grab your stitch marker and place it into the last stitch that we made earlier. And for round 13, we're just making 6 decreases for a total of 6 stitches. So I like to do the invisible decrease method, so I'm going to go for the front loop only of the next 2 stitches. Then I'm going to grab the yarn, pull for those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And we're going to continue to do this, going into the front loops of the next 2 stitches. Grab the yarn, pull it for those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then same thing again, going for the front loops of the next 2 stitches. Grab the yarn, pull it through those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then we're going to the next 2 stitches, going for the front loops only. Grab the yarn, pull it for those 2 front loops, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And then again, going for the front loops of the next 2 stitches, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. And finally, we're on our last decrease or invisible decrease of this round and of our entire bear. Going for the front loops of the next 2 stitches, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then for the 2 loops on the hook. Now we just need to fasten off, so grab the yarn, pull for the loop on the hook, and then we are going to need to leave some extra yarn so we can sew the body of our bear closed. Cut off that yarn, pull it all the way through. Finish adding stuffing to your bear. Then grab your needle and we're going to sew the plushie closed. So insert the needle in for the first stitch, and then out the second stitch, and then back into the first stitch, and then back out, and back in, and out, and then pull tight to close up the plushie. And then once you're ready to secure the yarn, insert the needle for a nearby spot, leave a little bit of slack to thread the needle through again and pull tight. And then for extra security, I like to knot it a few times. You want the knot to be big enough where you can hide it inside of the plushie and it won't easily fall out, but also you don't want it to be too big where you can't even pull it through the plushie. Then grab your needle again and pull the knot through the plushie. Once the knot is hidden fully inside of the plushie, grab your scissors and cut off that excess yarn, and puff up your plushie to hide it fully inside. And we are done with the body of the bear. So we are almost done. The last thing that we have to do is to sew on the nose and attach the snout to our bear. So let's grab our black yarn. You just need a little bit of this, and we're going to sew a nose onto the snout. So grab your needle. We're going to sew the nose on the top half of the snout, so not straight in the middle, but a little bit higher up. Push the needle through the back to the front of the piece. And then we're going to move the needle slightly over and insert it back in. And we're going to do this 2 times if you want to, depending on how thick you want the nose to be. I'm doing it twice. And then just tie the ends of the black yarn together. I usually do this 2 or 3 times just to make sure that it's secure. And then to make the snout a little bit easier to sew on, I'm just going to trim the yarn ends a little bit, but you don't want to trim it all off because you still want it to be secure. Now grab the body of the bear and place the snout on the bear's face right below the eyes. Now grab the needle and we're going to use that long tail that we had left over for sewing to sew the snout onto the bear's face. Insert the needle into the base of our bear and we're going to move 1 stitch over, going in a circular motion around the bear's face. Pull the needle all the way through and then we're going to insert the needle for the snout piece. For this snout piece, I'm just going for one of the loops of the stitches on the bear's snout. So I believe that is the back loop of the stitch. Pull the yarn all the way through and then insert the needle back into the same place that you exited out of on the base of the bear. Insert the needle back into the same place that we had exited out of on the base of the bear and move 1 stitch over. We're moving in a circle and we're just going to repeat this until we get all the way around the bear's snout. Once you're all the way around to the other side, if you want to, you can go around it a second time, just neaten up the stitches and to also make it more secure. Otherwise, you can go ahead and finish the piece. To secure the piece, we're going to do the same thing that we did for the base of the bear. We're going to push the needle through a nearby spot, leave a little bit of slack to push the needle through, and then pull tight, and then knot it a few times. And then use that needle to pull the knot for the body of the bear. Congratulations! You have finished your bear. Let me know what you named it and if you have any questions in the comments. If you like this tutorial, please don't forget to leave a like or subscribe or share this video. Honestly, I do appreciate it so much and I'll let me continue to make content like this for you. Until next time!